Welcome to the Runner podcast. I'm Coach Anya, an international marathon runner.
And I'm Coach Ben, and one of the co-founders of Runna.
Each week we'll be deep diving into the world of running, speaking to some inspiring individuals about their running journeys.
Runna is the #1 rated running coaching service worldwide. We help hundreds of thousands of people all over the world train for any running goal. And if you want to try out Runna for free, you can try it out using the code RUNNERPODCAST, all one word, to get 2 weeks of free access to the Runna app.
Today on the podcast we have an amazing story from Yahya Pandor, who has recently broken the world record to be the first blind athlete to run a marathon without being tethered to his guide. He is an inspiration and he tells us all about how it is to train whilst being visually impaired. Let's get into the episode. Hello Yahya, how are you? Welcome to the podcast.
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited to hear about your story. Can you tell us where this incredible journey that you've been on all started and how you found running?
So I only started running just over a year ago, so it's still very, very new to me. I did some work with an organisation called British Blind Sport, and they were telling people they'd done a survey that most blind or visually impaired people aren't very active. I think over 95% of blind or visually impaired people have no sort of activity in their daily lives. So we did a whole campaign to get people more active. I was doing jiu-jitsu at the time, but thought, let's try something different. There was a half marathon event coming to the city that I lived at. So I thought, let's just do something silly, let's sign up for it. The worst thing that can happen is I either do it very slow, which I did, or don't do it at all. And I just loved it. I really did. I think it was just the challenge, something to work to, being able to see the result at the end, completing the race, however slow it was. Just been setting myself more and more challenges as time goes on, because that keeps me motivated.
I guess training for a first half marathon is extremely hard for anyone and during a lifetime achievement for a lot of people. It's obviously a lot harder to do that when you're blind. How did you go about working towards the half marathon?
Yeah, so I thought the good thing about running is it has no cost when you start. I wore old trainers, old jogging bottoms, old t-shirt, didn't buy any special shoes or fancy equipment. I just sort of started running. There's this website by England Athletics where it's called Find a Guide. You just type in your postcode and it has a list of guide runners who have completed a course in your area. Messaged the 3 people that were on there. One of them got back to me and we went out on a run. It was supposed to be a 5k run, but I think I managed about 3k before dying. I think I did that thing where everyone does. They try and run as fast as possible because it's the first time running and you think that's how running works. And then you can't even complete the distance that you set out to do. So it's been a learning journey.
And presumably that first run is so freeing because you've got a guide with you. And most people could go out on a run and do it.
Yeah,
whereas
it's both freeing and scary because you're putting your trust entirely in someone you've never met before. You've communicated with via messenger to set things up, but here you are in a location that you sort of know because you've lived in that area your whole life, but you're putting your hands in a complete stranger. So it's scary initially, but every guide that I've had, we've just got along so well that it then does become such a freeing experience, because normally I'm holding on to someone, I've got my cane. Whereas when I'm running, I don't need any of that and I can just run.
And so on your first run, did you have a bit of rope between you? Did you hold?
I most of the runnings that I do, especially on road runnings, just for safety, I do have a tether.
Yep.
The challenge with Manchester, the marathon that I did, I wanted to do it untethered, which would then end up creating a world record.
So you went from this first half marathon that you trained towards in quite a short space of time to work towards Manchester.
Yeah, well, I needed a new challenge to keep me excited. I find if I have something on the horizon, it keeps me motivated with training. My sister started running the same time as I did, and she was like, let's do the marathon. So we did what everyone does, put your name in for the ballot for London. Didn't get London, so it's like, what's next? And Manchester was one of them. Reached out to them to see if they would help me create this world record, and they were more than accommodating. And I thought, let's give it a go. It's like my approach to many things in life. Just have a go. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But at least you then can't say you haven't tried or done it.
It's so amazing. I can't believe it. And you did Manchester in 4 hours and 22 minutes?
Yes, which was... I just wanted to complete it. There was no time limit. It was, let's just get it done.
It's still so fast. Faster than my first marathon.
Yeah, like now that I've done it, it's time to work on things like speed and things like that.
Well, if you follow Anya's trajectory, you'll be
she's incredible.
You'll be 2 hours and 22 in 2 years from now.
Just incredible. And in 2 years, yeah, that's amazing.
So I guess like running in an event, we're surrounded by so many people. That's really hard for anyone, but to try and do that where you don't have doing that visual spatial awareness, how do you go about dealing with that?
Well, I think with Manchester, it spurred me on. There's something about tuning into the crowds and listening to them and what they're saying and cheering. So it takes you away from the pain of running a marathon, especially towards the end. But, kudos has been given to my guide, George. He had to speak very loudly. He had to ensure that I was safe. He had to not only run, but talk to me for the entire duration of the race, just so I could anchor myself to his voice. So, he had immense responsibility and it wouldn't have been possible without him.
And what does like the training or the practice look like for that? Were you doing all of your training runs untethered or?
So the biggest difficulty is finding a guide, especially when you're training for a marathon. I was running 6 times a week, basically. So to find a guide 6 times a week is impossible. So most of my runs were done in a gym on a treadmill. So I used to do my long runs on a Saturdays. Just imagine doing 4 hours on a treadmill in a dark gym with no windows. It's a good thing that I can't see, but it does get very, very boring. Yeah. But I think it builds your mental stamina, if nothing else, because I found the biggest part of running has been the mental endurance rather than the physical endurance. And I don't think, on training plans, everyone talks about the physical side of it, but running for me is such a mental thing that my legs can run faster than my mind allows them to, I think, most of the times.
And I guess like on that mental resilience, losing your sight is a really hard thing. Have you found running's been something that's helped you through that journey, or was that something you processed before you moved into?
So when I lost my sight, many people will know this story. I was diagnosed. I left the ophthalmology appointment and I walked right into a lamppost as if to highlight what I'd just been told, that I'm going blind. And in that moment, I had to make a decision, really. Let it break me. Let it be the end of how I do things. Let it overcome me. Or I could laugh at the irony of it and choose, because I do think for me it was a choice to live my life as freely as possible. In that moment, I just started laughing like a maniac on the street. And that was my choice. And since then, every single day, it's a choice to live my life as fully as possible and not to let my blindness or any adversity get in my way. Nothing's going to stop me as long as, I believe in myself.
Did people think you were crazy? Did your partner think you were crazy when you were like, I'm going to run a marathon?
I don't know if it's crazy. I think she was more annoyed that I spent all my time running. Like, it becomes such a big part of your life, especially when you're training for something. I didn't want my lack of training to be the thing that held me back. So I was, running every evening, most weekends. And she's like, all you do is run. And I'm like, I enjoy it. And I want to succeed in this. So yeah.
You go.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I was just saying before you came in that I asked if his partner ever runs with him. And don't think you trust her.
So we tried it, and we've tried it a couple of times, but she's not the best of guys. She gets very distracted. So she'll be like, oh, there's a bird, there's a pigeon, oh, there's a man. And I'm like, keep me safe, I'm ready to go.
And so you wouldn't bring her along with one of your guys?
No, she's always been there supporting me. Okay. She's been at every race that I've run, and I'm sure she will do. But we tend to run individually rather than together.
It's amazing.
And I guess like you've now completed a marathon, you've broken a world record. Does that mean that now running becomes? Do you now want to push for bigger and wilder, crazier challenges?
So yeah, speed is the next thing. A half marathon booked in September that I wanted to try and do sub 130.
Wow.
The other issue is when you're looking for a guide runner, the faster you get, and this sounds like a real humble brag, doesn't it? But the faster you get, the more difficult it is to find guide runners at that pace, because they have to do more than guide. They have to speak to you, so they have to run considerably faster than I can run at my top speed. So it becomes harder to find guide runners. And I was just saying before, I'm deciding to give trail running a go, which is going to be a completely new thing. Never tried it before, but someone that I run with, Andy, he's got a local trail half marathon coming up. He's like, let's just give it a go. So I'm going to do that with him. No time. It's just, let's just try it. Let's see what happens and have some fun.
I'm going to see it. So to say, trail running for me is like, really tough.
I've never done it, so.
Because I guess then that's where you really need a serious level of communication, just doing big rock coming in the middle, slightly on the right, like shifting left, like paddle.
It's going to be so important. And tuning into the running as well as the directions takes a lot of energy. So again, it's about taking all the pressure off myself and my guide and just having fun with it.
Because I would assume that when you're running on the tarmac, you're assuming the tarmac is smooth unless you're communicated otherwise.
Yeah.
But you almost have to flip that. You have to flip that assumption when you're on the trail, which is you're almost stepping into a slightly unknown, is your ankle going to roll left or right at every step, and that's going to really...
Yeah, and my issue is I always drift. If there's any bit of a hill, I'll be drifting off into the distance, so someone has to shout to make sure that I come back, and there are a lot more slopes.
Yeah, and so was doing Manchester kind of without a tether because you wanted to do a challenge and prove that you could do it? Or is it that you prefer the freedom of not being tethered?
It initially started off as the challenge. So there was a gentleman that did the Great North Run. He did the half marathon and was the first person to do a half marathon untethered. And I listened to that race and I thought, you know what, I want to do one better. So I went for the full marathon. But it is just so freeing that now, at any opportunity I get, I'd rather go untethered rather than tethered.
So when you first step foot on the trails, will you be tethered?
It would make sense to. Where the trail run starts is actually where we do our weekly park runs. Okay. So that bit, that first 5K I know, but the rest of it...
So you could almost take a tether for the bits that are more technical, perhaps?
Yeah, I think that it depends how busy the race is and things like that. I think we'll just do a few recce runs just to find out more about it and see how it goes.
So I was going to ask, a lot of people run because they like how it makes you feel. Mm-hmm. And obviously, whether you can see or not, you still have that feeling of running. What does running feel like to you? Can you almost...
Well, a key moment was I had a 2-hour long run on a treadmill, got to the gym and my earphones weren't working and I thought, this is not going to be fun. But it's an over half an hour walk to the gym from home. So I was like, I'm not walking half an hour back and half an hour, another hour. So I did that run without earphones and I felt completely at peace. And, I thought I'm in a great place. Running is doing great for me because I don't think I would have ever been able to say that before. So there is something about running that is just so liberating and so fun for me. And don't get me wrong, sometimes running sucks. Doing hill sprints or a tempo session or something like that, you're really struggling. You hate it whilst you're doing it. But the moment that you stop and you've done it successfully and you're like, this is amazing, this is why I do it.
So for those of you who don't know, you only actually recently went blind 3 or 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you didn't run before that. Do you wish you did?
I don't know. I honestly can't say. I'm really glad I've picked it up. Would it have been different? Could I see? I think it would have made it much easier. You can just leave the house and start running.
But I think it's amazing you can still get the mental benefits.
Yeah, but I think there's some, especially when you're doing a run outside, especially when it's nice weather like today, I'm going on a run this evening, and it will just be so good to get out, not be stuck at home, and then just get out and about. And it's a good excuse, isn't it, really, at the end of the day?
I can't get over your daily step count. So you walk for half an hour to get to the gym?
Yeah.
And do a 2-hour long run?
Yeah.
And then do you walk home?
I do. And do you know what the worst part is? I live on the top of a hill, so on the way back I have to go uphill, which I hate. I count that as towards my training.
That is some incredible endurance.
you just have to, like, for sighted people, you can drive to the gym, it'll take them a few minutes, that's fine. They can literally leave their door and go on a run. I don't have that luxury, unfortunately. And it's that choice, when you're training in December, when it's pouring with rain and you've got to do a half an hour walk to the gym, it's making that choice. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to let the negative thoughts win. I'm doing this to achieve something and better myself, so I have to do this. And it's about overcoming yourself, really.
I guess it almost gives you the opportunity to have like a 30-minute mental warm-up. Like, we all want to physically warm up for a run, and go and do some dynamic stretches, and build into the run with those first few kilometres. But you almost get to go into that knowing you've psyched yourself up for 30 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. I do always mix in a strength session whilst I'm at the gym anyway, because it's
okay.
Part
So
of running
I
now.
completely undersold you there. So you do a 30-minute walk to the gym, a 2-hour run, and a strength session, and then a 30-minute walk home.
Yeah, you do have to do it, though, don't you? Everyone says strength and conditioning is so important.
Gosh, I feel like you need to take on an ultra marathon with the endurance that you've got in you.
I don't know about that. Maybe in the future.
I guess someone who's been a huge part of your journey is your brother.
Yeah, so my brother is just my biggest rock and fan, I think. And he keeps me humble. He constantly teases me, annoys me, as a younger brother does, I suppose. He's just incredible. He was there pretty much throughout my entire sight loss journey. He's just, if you ever meet him, he's the person you'd want to be, I think. He's just so warm. He just gets along with everyone. He's got such a positive attitude on life that's just infectious. He's amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've watched some of your TikToks, which are very funny, with your brother.
Yeah, he's got a great sense of humour.
Yeah.
I think you're noticing a lot of them. There's a theme of him bullying me in some way.
How important is the support and the community around you, especially for running
So
whilst being
I've
visually
been
impaired?
incredibly lucky in the fact that I've got an amazing support system. My family are incredible. My friends have been incredible. The people that I've found through running, every single person that I've come across has been amazing. I've never had a bad experience. I think running is such a great community, isn't it? Everyone is on some sort of journey in running. So I think everyone appreciates that about each other, and a wonderful partner as well. So I'm just pretty lucky, I think.
Amazing, like positive, like outlook. Like, you're incredible. How do you think the world, the community, can help make visually impaired running like more accessible, or what can be done? I know you do a lot in that space.
So I think it'd be nice to see visually impaired runners more in the limelight. For example, I couldn't name you a marathon runner that was blind or visually impaired. So there isn't enough media coverage of like at an elite level, not just at an amateur level. I think a lot more people, if they can and have the capacity, do the guide training course, because it is difficult to find guide runners, especially if you're in more rural areas. Things like the park run are a great initiative, I've got to say. And yeah, just people asking questions, because there are so many perceptions, I think, of blind or disabled people in general, where people feel like they can't do things in the same way, or they just can't do things full stop. And that can be a barrier. I know when I moved to Swindon, I reached out to a running club on 3 different occasions, and they just didn't get back to me because they weren't sure on how to approach the situation. So I think it's about being curious, being inquisitive, asking the questions, and just giving it a go. Like, I always say, what's the worst that can happen? I'll fall over and graze my knee. So what? I can get back up. So it's just trying. And if everyone has that attitude and that mentality, it will make it so much easier.
And do you find the sheer confidence you have now that you've been able to take on a marathon?
I think as a blind person, you have to have that confidence. If you want to succeed, you have to be an advocate for yourself. You have to keep on trying. Otherwise, you'll get left behind. Or if you don't get me wrong, I get nervous, I get anxious, I get scared, but it's about accepting that's okay to feel, and then putting things in place so that you can overcome that.
And then that powers you back on in other areas of your life outside of the running.
Absolutely. It's not just about running, is it? The endurance that you build, the mental stamina that you build, the ability to focus and follow a plan, all of those things, the resourcefulness that you need to find guide runners, fit everything into your day, that follows you in your outside life, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I guess, like, what advice would you give to your younger self when maybe you had that first diagnosis, knowing that you have such a phenomenal life now?
Keep going, because when you get that diagnosis, your world does end in some form. You're never going to be able to live your life in a similar fashion. Things change so much. I could improvise a lot more when I could see. I could just go out and do things, whereas now things take a lot more planning. So it's about keep going. You all have those dark days, literally and figuratively, but it's about just keeping on going.
Do you think running has helped you cope with the challenges you face with blindness?
I think it's given me a lot more confidence and perseverance, but I'd lost my sight for a couple of years before even taking up running, so I don't know. I think it's enhanced it in many ways.
So much, like you don't even think about, like even in a marathon, like the aid stations. Do you have to take your own stuff with you? Like
I do take my own fuel just because I know what works.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important part of preparation. I'm quite can be a bit. I can use my guide as a bit of a lackey sometimes. I'm like, can you carry a bottle for me? So that's quite useful. And having a guide is a great motivating factor as well, because they're constantly challenging, constantly pushing you. You don't want to let them down, but they also spur you on as well. So that's quite helpful, having a guide. It's like having a personal cheerleader when you're running, which you need.
And I guess when it comes to like choosing your equipment, whether it's doing your gels, whether it's probably not your gels, but whether it's your shoes, whether it's your clothes, presumably you're entirely thinking about how it feels, how it fits, and you're not being bothered about doing the aesthetic side of things.
No, though I'd say I'm quite fashion conscious sometimes.
You look cool now.
I like having bright coloured shoes, and most running shoes are pretty bright coloured. Funny story, I brought some new running trainers. I actually need to change them. I think I've done nearly 1,000 kilometres in them. But when I brought them, I accidentally brought a woman's pair. And it was only when my partner was like, you do realise you've brought a woman's pair of running trainers? They fit fine, they feel fine, who cares? So yeah, it's not that important, as long as they feel comfortable and they work.
I mean, it's really interesting that you like kind of bright shoes, bright things, because I'm the same. I don't like wearing boring colours. And is that because you remember kind of that vibe, or is it that you associate bright colours with a certain personality?
Part of that vibe,
and that's
part of the personality, and part of it is just practical reasons. So the running shirt that I wear is bright neon pink.
Yeah.
It just gives me more visibility to anyone else running as well. So there is quite a practical element to it.
That's amazing. And yeah, like you said, there's so many things that we wouldn't be thinking about day to day that I guess runs through your head in all areas of your life and in your running life as well.
How hard was Manchester Marathon? Was there any point where it was really tough?
So I've got to be completely honest, I enjoyed every single second of it. I loved it. And so George, the guide, I actually met him for the first time on the morning of the race. So we'd communicated beforehand, but I'd never ran with him and didn't know him. So that really helped, because we could just get to know each other, and that distracted me from the pain of running.
You basically had 4 hours to get to know a new friend.
Exactly. And the crowds cheered me on. And because Manchester had done a whole promotion over it, people knew me, so that was really encouraging. The moment I stopped after the race, that was when it hit me, and I could not walk properly. So it was completely fine all the way to the end. The moment I stopped, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get back to the hotel now. So yeah, and then the next few days were rough. I don't think I've ever felt that much pain in my legs. But yeah.
And so kind of thinking about your running on an ongoing basis, like, what does running look like for you now? What's a normal week? And
so in preparation for Manchester, I was running probably 110 kilometres, 65 miles a week. So I was putting in the hours. That dropped dramatically after the race. Now that I've just started a new training block for the half, that's going to increase steadily as well. I try on a good week run 5-6 times a week, because I just think consistency is the most important thing. Like I said, it gets me out. And I enjoy it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it that often.
And did you go running this morning?
I'm going this evening when I get back home.
What have you got in store?
I'm just doing a 10k easy run with my guide. I did a hill session yesterday, so it's definitely an easy session to do.
Wow. So will you always choose to run outside if you can organise a guide, and if not,
100%,
you walk the treadmill?
Especially in weather like this. It's slightly demoralizing running on a treadmill inside a gym for a few hours. So any opportunity that I can run outside, I will take it 100%.
And so do you now find you've got a bigger network of guides that makes it easier for you to work with people that way? Or
Yeah, I do have, because I've met so many people through others, they're not qualified guide runners in the fact that they haven't done the course, but I've done a few training runs with them. We've worked well together. So now I have a rota of about 6 or 7, which is quite nice. And quite lucky, really.
Do you think you'll do another marathon one day?
So I put my name in for London again. Didn't get it, of course. But Brighton Marathon is what I'm thinking, because someone has offered to guide me for it. So, but I've been told that's quite hilly, so don't know. So that'll be the next marathon I do if I decide to do it.
But just keep enjoying running.
Yeah, that is it, isn't it? I get so much joy from it. It's such a positive impact on my life. It's one of those things where when I was ill, or if I can't go on a run for some reason, I feel really jittery and I feel like I need to go on that run. My partner's like, just relax. You need to take rest days if you're running. I want to run.
I think those are the same feelings that we have every day, and I think so many people listening will resonate with as well.
The resting is as important as everything else, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, getting a balance between all these things and doing it in a way that means that we can be consistent for the long term, like you found. Amazing. Well, it is absolutely amazing to hear all of those doing amazing parts to the story. We're going to take us away to Steph for our coaching tip of the week, and we're going to come back with some slightly more lighthearted conversation in the second half.
Today, I have 3 non-negotiables for you when it comes to fueling and training. Life is all about balance, but there are certain things we can do in our training to really optimize our performance. My first one is avoid doing fasted training. This will delay our recovery, the depleted energy will affect our performance, and this can have a knock-on effect on sessions to come. My second one is for any runs you do over 70 minutes, make sure you're fueling. Take with you a gel, an energy bar or a drink, and consume this every 30 to 35 minutes. My final one is, as soon as you finish your running session, make sure you refuel and re-energize with a protein-rich and carbohydrate snack. The carbohydrates will help restore any energy reserves that have been depleted, and the protein is great to build muscle. Stick to these rules and you won't compromise the quality of your training.
Thank you so much for that, Steph. We're now going to dive into the dilemmas, myth debunking and discussion. The first one is, how useful is heart rate as a measurement for your training?
Well, I think heart rate is a very, very valuable tool. So ultimately, our heart is going to beat faster the harder that we're running. So it's a really good measure of kind of, are you pushing to a maximum? And it can be a really productive thing to use when we're both trying to keep our intensity easy, or also when we're trying to really keep ourselves accountable to pushing really hard. I also think it's a really great measure of our fitness over time. So imagine we were to do an easy run, and during someone like myself and you, Anya, we might be running at a 4:45 or a 4:30 pace for an easy run. If we then do that a year later and we think we've got fitter, our heart rate should be lower. So typically for me, I'll actually often use heart rate more in retrospect. So I'm tracking my heart rate, normally using an external heart rate monitor, because often on the wrist it's not as accurate. But then I'm able to kind of like analyze my run afterwards. I find, or I would describe heart rate as almost like a secondary metric. So if we were to try and run faster, as a result, our heart rate goes up. So that's why it's not the way that we'll coach through Runna. Instead, we'll recommend paces or an effort level, because by trying to run to a 7 out of 10 effort as an RPE, or trying to run at doing a 4-minute kilometer if you're doing a slightly faster runner, that will then lead to you running harder and your heart rate going up. Rather than trying to run to a heart rate, which then means to do that, you then need to run faster. But there's lots of different ways that one can train, and I think it's a very useful thing for everyone to understand and to be aware of.
Yeah.
Is there anything either of you guys would add to that with heart rate?
I don't actually use a heart rate monitor because it's quite difficult. It's just another gadget to add. But I go by effort, or what I call conversational pace. If I'm running with my guide and I can talk to them without any effort and still run, then I know I'm running at a good level for my easy runs.
Yeah.
Obviously, when I'm doing my much harder runs, I can barely talk towards the end of it, and that's telling me I've got a hard effort.
Presumably with that in mind, you would never listen to music when you run.
On the treadmills, I do.
Okay.
Like I said, it's just too much. But yeah, outside running, nothing. I need my ears to hear everything out.
When you're doing like speed work, do you do that to effort, or do you have your like, you know, when your phone tells you what pace you're going?
So I use my phone, and on a treadmill, it's much easier to set, and I sort of now work out roughly where I am, so I can do that.
Does a treadmill have kind of audio features so that you can? How do you understand?
I've just had to get used to it.
What is that simply the number of clicks or what you're pressing?
Yeah, number of clicks. So I know what my steady pace is. If I'm doing speed sessions, then what the max speed is. For hill sessions, I just do something really simple. I do it on maximum hill.
And when you say you know the maximum speed of the tread, does that mean you're doing intervals at the maximum speed
No,
of the treadmill? Okay.
Like for hill sessions, I am.
Yeah.
Because it's just easier.
Yeah.
I think most gym treadmills go to about 23, 24
Then go to
miles
some
an hour.
frightening
That would be
speeds. Yeah,
stupidly fast.
Yeah.
That'd be incredible. No, I can't go that fast. I now know roughly what it is.
No, that's great. We'll ask one more. This is a myth in my eyes, anyway. Running a marathon is the ultimate goal. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's so common that people think that one should aim or aspire to run a marathon one day, and that's partly because you're telling this amazing story about running a marathon, and you're a marathon runner. I like running marathons, but I think like the way I would think about running is running's this amazing thing that we all get to enjoy, and I don't think everyone even needs to be a runner. I think everyone needs to find some form of regular exercise to be a healthy person, to be a healthy, hopefully, and happy person. For those who view running as their medium, people might aspire to get faster and to get stronger or to do big challenges one day. But I think absolutely not. I think a marathon is a really hard thing. It takes an enormous amount of discipline and an enormous amount of compromise in other areas of our lives. And running might be one of the many sports we play, or it might be this thing that we're getting into and we're really enjoying it around a really stressful job and a family, and you've been working towards getting to a 10K and seeing that as a sustainable long-term part of their journey is an amazing way to do it. I think, we and so many people glamorize doing a marathon. It's an amazing achievement. For some people, it might be a tick box achievement once in a lifetime, and for some people it will be their personality, probably like you and I and the three of us even, but yeah, so I think it's an amazing goal for some, but definitely you don't need to run a marathon just to be, or you don't need to run a marathon to be a runner.
No, not at all. I can only echo that. Find your distance, but just keep variety in there, keep things exciting. And you don't have to run a marathon to be a runner, as you said. You just have to go out and run, and whatever that might be. That might be for 5 minutes a day, because that's all you've got. Or it might be setting yourself a challenge like a marathon. It's just about doing it because you enjoy it, because you get some sort of benefit from it. And to be active.
I think if you enjoy going further, then go further and work up to a marathon. And if you don't enjoy it, then you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Right, well, we're going to come on to some fun or silly this or that. So, up first, you're never allowed to eat pick and mix again, or you're never allowed to eat out at a restaurant ever again.
So this is really funny. Pick and mix are my go-to fueling.
Yeah.
Because it's just fun. During a run, I will eat pick and mix as part of my fueling because it's just a fun way. I even sometimes wake up and the first thing I do is eat pick and mix my all time. So that's a really difficult one.
That's why we chose it.
so yeah, I'm gonna have to go with keep pick and mix.
What's your favourite sweets?
Oh, I love like fizzy cola bottles or bubblegum bottles or things like that. Something fizzy to
Covered in sugar.
Yeah.
Nice. What about yourself?
I actually, I hadn't even thought. I have such a sweet tooth, and I do love sweets. But I also love good food in restaurants, and I'm a really bad cook, so I think I'd have to get rid of the sweets for the restaurants.
I'm with you on that. I'm restaurants and no sweets. Although if you'd made it ice cream, that would be a different story. Okay, so next up, would you rather only ever be able to run in 30-degree heat for the rest of your life, or only be able to run in the rain? So the way I'll say it is, every time you run, it's 30 degrees. Magically, you're going to run 30 degrees. You're going to run, it immediately starts raining. So you can run whenever you like, but it's always 30 degrees plus, or it's always raining.
I'd go with running in the rain. I don't mind it too much. So you can wrap up, put a hood on, and it's fine. And it would be hilarious, just a rain cloud over me whilst I'm in the gym on the treadmill running.
Even when you got your 30-minute walk home.
Even then, we live in England.
Sound like
winter.
You're hardier than Anya and I, London folk.
It rains all the time in the winter. You just sort of have to get on with it, don't you? Whereas 30-degree heat takes a lot of energy to run in.
I mean, I am without doubt going for 30-degree heat.
So am I.
I am. I spent 2 years living in Greece, so I got used to the heat and enjoy it.
I just quite like sweating.
Yeah. You probably like the tan.
Yeah.
It'll save you money on all the fake tan as well, right? Okay, so last one. Would you rather every time you go on a run you have to do it in damp socks because it's always raining?
Yeah.
Or every run you go on you have a pebble in your shoe?
Damp socks. It's got to, pebble would be so frustrating. It would
Starting a
hurt
run in damp socks
so
though.
much. But like
A little pebble.
Like where I do my Saturday Park runs, when it rains, there are massive puddles. It comes up to my ankles, and that's like on the first bit. So I'm running all the way with wet things. I think just got to enjoy it. Because kids used to jump in puddles, right, and really have fun. As adults, you sort of hate water. So now I've looked at it as like, just have fun. Pretend you're jumping through puddles, and then you don't really focus on the wet socks, and it's fine.
Fair.
It's about changing your outlook, isn't it?
Yeah. I was going to go with pebble. I quite like it when there's pebble in my shoe. It's like a little massage. I don't ever take it out.
That is strange.
Yeah.
I think we'll have to take this out, otherwise people are going to think you're just a very bizarre human.
Yeah.
So does that mean that you're thinking, right, got my London Marathon coming up, let's just go find my favourite little pebble?
Can't you
not that
feel
far,
it, though? You can
Yeah,
always feel
sometimes
a
it
pebble.
hurts and sometimes it's quite like a nice scratch.
Okay. I don't think I want either, but I think I'd be just on the side of damp socks. But anyway, right, we know Anya is even more bizarre than we thought.
No, well, yeah, probably. We have got an embarrassing story now that's been sent in, which I'll read out and we can give our reactions. And if you have an embarrassing story, we can also share that. Okay. When I was coaching cross country, I was running with my students and a bee flew up my shorts and stung me in an inappropriate place. We had to run back to the school. By the time we got back, I was swollen from the neck down to my feet, and a student had to call an ambulance to explain what happened to go to A&E. Caveat, I was fine. I just needed a steroid shot.
Wow.
I've never been stung before, have you?
Yeah, on runs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in Devon, Cornwall, that we have to run past this
And
bee
you
place.
didn't have an allergic reaction like this
No,
person?
luckily.
Because my mum's been stung by I think it's wasps, and she's very allergic to the point where she's a relatively healthy woman, and one day she came home looking very, very overweight because her face had probably doubled in size, could hardly open her eyes. Anyway, now she is extremely petrified of wasps because I think allergic reactions can get worse over time. Wow, this poor person, I guess probably getting stung in the crotch means it's straight in the blood flow and probably makes things worse, right?
Yeah. My dad got a jellyfish sting in the crotch once.
So what, did he just wet himself and sort himself out?
Yeah. Probably. I remember that as a child.
What do you have any embarrassing running stories you want to share?
Trying to think of embarrassing running stories. I always go in the wrong direction, so
Yeah.
someone has to
Well, I think
pull me back.
you've got a good
But
excuse
that's
for
a good
that.
excuse, right? Thinking you're talking to someone before a run starts and you're just talking to them because they were there and
Oh,
just left without,
they just disappeared.
without telling you. So
I feel like that would be quite funny.
but that happens relatively often. You're talking to someone, they don't tell you they're leaving,
Yeah.
and you can sort of continue the conversation and you're like, they're really good listeners. Nope, they've just gone.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's very funny. I love that. Well, our last question on the podcast is probably the silliest of all of them. So you're on the start line of your next marathon, Brighton Marathon. You're kind of looking to push the time and see what you can achieve, but you're completely naked. You can bring 3 things. What 3 things are you bringing to Brighton Marathon?
100% shoes, right? I don't mind the rest of me being naked, I suppose, as long as I've got shoes.
Okay, so item 1,
that's
shoes.
okay.
And what are your go-to shoes of choice?
So at the moment, I'm wearing the Saucony Endorphins, but looking for a new pair if anyone has recommendations. The second thing I would bring would be fueling, so a bottle of something.
Yeah.
Third thing, well, my eyes are really sensitive, so it's got to be sunglasses. There's going to be sunglasses, shoes, and a bottle of energy drink.
Nice. Well, I think we've heard that combination a few times, so maybe it is kind of fine tuning to the model answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? What did you guys get for?
So I'm carbon shoes.
Yeah.
I'm sunglasses.
Yeah.
But then I'm my watch, so I can put it on Strava.
Yeah.
And the Runna app.
I have conned the system with a speed suit, So I have one piece of clothing on my body and then socks and shoes.
But I was listening to a podcast, and nude running's becoming a thing, isn't it?
I didn't know that.
There's 2 half marathon events a year in like New Forest or somewhere. One of them's in September, and the other one's later on.
Sound like you're
It's
a
like
man
full-
who's been learning the
full fit.
dates.
Well, I was really intrigued because like it's got to be pretty difficult, right? And embarrassing, but yeah, it's allegedly a big thing now, and it's
Wow. Well,
so it's something to try. Put on the bucket list.
yeah,
more
maybe
than
we'll have to
something
go
do.
and check that one out. So we'll see all of our runners there in September. If anyone's training for the nude September New Forest Marathon, you said, then get in touch and run us there to build you a plan. Well, no, honestly, it's been absolutely incredible to hear about your story, share that an amazing world record, and share your journey. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and hopefully you've inspired lots of other runners to follow suit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Runna. If you want to train for any running goal, please download the app, and don't forget you can use the code RUNNAPODCAST for a 2-week free trial.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, follow, do all of that nonsense, and we'll be back here next week. And if you want to be featured, send us your embarrassing running story. Either send us a voice note on Instagram or send us an email to podcast@runner.com so that we can have a good laugh at your expense in Runner HQ and share it on one of the next episodes.